You've mastered business, you've mastered making money, but when it comes to love, you can't quite find the one, right? You know there's something that's not quite working. You know there's something that's sabotaging your dating life. You might even be blaming in women, right? Feminism, something out there, right? But you know something's not working. So that is why you're here. Because in this episode, I'm going to show you why you and the way you're being and the way you're acting is unconsciously creating the very problems that you are experiencing in your dating life, right? I've worked with hundreds of high achieving men, CEOs, entrepreneurs, serial entrepreneurs, leaders, managers, and like 90% of them, they make the same 5 mistakes when it comes to dating, right? Which also leak into relationships. And every single one of them that you make, right? These mistakes, they destroy intimacy and connection. Right? So I'm going to show you exactly what they are, and I'm going to talk to you about what you can do to change it. Right? So bear with me. It's going to be 5. I might throw some extra ones in there because, if something comes to mind as I'm recording, it just kind of comes out. So mistake number 1, believing that your worth and leading with your worth, right? What you believe is valuable, which is money, status, and achievement. And I see so many men do this. I've seen friends do this, right? I've got friends who run gyms and have multiple properties and all sorts of things. And they lead, right? When they meet a woman, what they lead with is money, right? They lead with fancy dates. They lead with taking them on holiday after getting to know them for a few dates, right? They lead with fancy restaurants, even gifts, right? They lead with the thing they think is valuable, which is money, right? Or your success or your status, right? All kind of wrapped up in one. Because what this is your persona. The persona that you show the world, right? That you get attention for and accolades for. And people are like, oh my God, he's so amazing. I wish I was a high value man like him, right? Your boss looks up to you. Maybe your subordinates at work look up to you. The people you interact with when you are selling or buying or doing your business, they all look up to you because they see this persona, right? And you lead with it. But the problem is underneath that persona is low self-esteem, low confidence, a lack of value in yourself and who you are, and a lack of self-love, right? And that's going to sound harsh, and it's going to sound like you might even say, that's not true. But beneath it, beneath all the success, beneath all the doing, right? That's what's sitting beneath it. And what that sets up is this conditional worth, right? This conditional logic in your brain, which is like, if I'm successful, I will be loved, right? Or I'll be loved if I'm successful enough. So you keep trying, striving, trying. This is a really common thing for, like I said, high achieving businessmen, entrepreneurs, right? They have this idea that if I'm successful, I will get the love that I want, right? And underneath that belief is a deeper dysfunctional belief. That's like one of the core beliefs is, I'm not good enough. And I can only be good enough, right, if I'm successful, right? So deep below it's like, I'm not good enough belief. And everything you're creating in your life is built upon that. And what happens with this building upon that, right, especially in the realms of dating, is you avoid allowing people to get close to you and see you because you just want them to see the persona, right? And ultimately, what it means is you're probably attracting women who are superficial, who are all about looks, money, status. And if you don't give them those things, because this is also what you believe, if you don't give them those things, they won't want you. But when you stop giving those things, they retreat or they leave, right? One of those two things, either you believe it and or when you do remove those things, right, you don't show those things, your evidence that you see is that they don't want you. So it sets up this belief that all women just want money and stuff and status, and that as a man, your only value is in money and stuff and status. So what can you do? One of the things you do with this is you start to actually work on your self-esteem. It's not about accomplishments. It's about really looking at your character and who you are. Are you a kind human being? Are you a good human being? Because there probably is parts of you that don't believe this is true. So it's working on this and feeling those things and experiencing those things, right? That you are a decent, good human being underneath it all, and start to lead with that. So instead of taking her to this Michelin star restaurant, right, you take her just to a coffee shop, nice Italian place run by an Italian couple who are, been in wherever you are for 30, 40 years, right? You start leading with you instead of the stuff you have. And this is going to be hard for you because you've been so used to it. But that is the key thing here. Stop leading with the money and the success and start leading with character and what's underneath, what's really who you are underneath all those things. But you have to work on those. You have to build the self-belief and confidence in who you are, right? Otherwise, you're going to struggle to lead with that because you're so used to not leading with that. And this is something I do with a lot of my clients, is building up this kind of underneath feeling, right? So that they actually start to think, oh my God, I'm a great human being. It's not just my money. Mistake number 2, right? This is when we bring this kind of competitive nature into dating, right? Because, you know, you're a businessman, you had to drive hard deals and so forth. So it's a competition. It's like, you know, and then you bring this same mentality into dating, right? And dating isn't a competition. It's not you versus women. It's not a battle, right? As much as a lot of the dating conversation and rhetoric now makes it sound as a battle between men and women, you know, you have to fend off gold diggers and all these sorts of things, right? It's not a battle, because when we get into battle, we destroy connection, right? So what happens a lot of the men I meet is they go and they meet women and they're in this kind of competition mode, analytical mode, and it's all about strategy and metrics and outcomes. So they go on a date and it starts even before the date. It starts on the dating apps and they're looking at the woman through the ends of analyzing. She's this on a look scale. She looks like she does these sorts of things of her life. There's an analytical, not looking at who she is as a human being, but the traits and things he has, as if you're appraising a stock option or something like that. Right? So you're analyzing. So you go on a date and you analyze, like, she's hot, she's attractive, she has nice ass, she has nice titties, whatever it is, right? You're analyzing. And what you're not doing is focusing on creating relational depth in the moment. You're analyzing, you're going for your tick box, right, in your mind, in the moment, and you're analyzing who she is. And part of this analyzing, so when we get into the looks, is about if she is good looking enough, right, will she make other people think that I'm the sort of guy that gets hot women? Right? This is a core, especially when the self-esteem is low. You want the world to think a certain way of you, right? And this analyzing of people is the problem. So what do you do about this, right? It's actually starting to shift into, I'm going to touch a bit more on this in a few of these mistakes, right? Shift more into feeling. How do I feel with this person, right? And not do I feel excited? Do I feel a spark? Do I feel like, you know, the world thinks I'm the fucking man? Do I feel calm? And this question you ask yourself, right? So do I feel calm? Do I feel relaxed? Do I feel like I can really be myself with this person? Do I feel like I'm having to play up to a persona or a way of being just to keep this person? That's not a great way to be, because you don't want a relationship like that. You want someone who you can feel calm, relaxed, your nervous system can down-regulate, who helps, you know, enables you to have fun and smile and laugh. Key aspects. So it's looking at what you feel internally, right? And there's some practices you have to do to learn how to, like, even pause and stop in the moment and, like, go, oh, what am I feeling? You know, what's my anxiety and fear and worry and story versus the person in front of you, right? And that takes curiosity, right? And it also takes vulnerability. And when I say vulnerability, it takes you being willing to kind of reveal more aspects of yourself, but also being willing to ask the questions that bypass the superficial bullshit, right? The super things about holidays and looks and banter, and delve deeper into who someone is. And you might not have that in your toolbox. You might not be able to ask someone like, oh man, you mentioned your dad and how he was estranged from you for many years. Like, how do you feel? How do you feel about that? How did you grow up as a young girl feeling that? Or how does you feel that impacts you now? Right? That's the sort of deeper question to get to know someone that you want to start deploying, right? And if you can't do that, then we should talk. Number 3, and this is one I used to do all the time, right? Wearing charisma as a mask, using charisma, this part of this persona of being charismatic, being fun, being interesting, being a social person, you know, all these things that work really well in your business and in your career, right? Because you have to charm people, you have to make things happen. The problem is when we get into dating, that stuff works for a while and it can create excitement and fun, and, you know, you pick up attractive women. But the problem is often the attractive women you pick up, and ladies listen to this, might be harsh, the attractive women you may be picking up, they're also wounded, right? Because they're looking for a man who is like, oh my God, he's not like the dad I didn't have, you know, who my dad was boring and dry. Or they're looking for a man who is, you know, rich and wealthy and can give them experiences they didn't have. And they haven't learned that actually they could go and create those experiences for themselves instead of just relying on a man to do that, right? So you'll find yourself with this charisma. You'll find shallow people because really you're operating from a very shallow point of view. You're just leading with charisma, fun, excitement, and so forth. And like I said, you create shallow relationships. You might be dating some model or some actress or some dancer, or whatever, right? I've been there, done all of those things, right? But ultimately, those women, and not all women that do those jobs, are superficial, right? There's a lack of depth in the relationship, right? And part of that is completely down to you because of what you're putting out into the world. You're putting out just charisma, a shallow layer of who you are, right? So you're attracting a shallow layer as well in them, and that's what you're connecting on. So your relationships feel shallow. They feel a bit empty, right? They might feel spark filled, but they're not deep. They're not meaningful, and they don't go anywhere. They burn bright and then they die off, right? Or you find yourself getting really bored. Because underneath it, there's this belief: if she knew the real me, she wouldn't want to stay. Yeah. But the truth is opposite. And not every woman's going to want to stay, right? There's some women who just won't be interested in you. And it's not about you, right? It's about where they're at and their ability. But ultimately, you have to be willing to reveal. You have to be willing to open. You have to be willing to connect and be interested and curious, right? Because ultimately, it is our quirks and our weirdness and our faults as human beings that make us attractive. Those are the things that make us attractive, right? That's the stuff we connect over. Like, I'll give you a little story of my younger sister. She's just got married. She married a man who's actually shorter than her as well. I always throw that in because, you know, a lot of us believe that, you know, if you're a short man, you can't ever meet anybody. And they really bonded over the fact they love, what's it called? World's Strongest Man. They love it. They both love World's Strongest Man. Who would have thought? But if they'd hidden that from each other, that would have been a thing they couldn't bond over, right? So it's really important to express like actually who you are and be willing to face the rejection and the judgment, right? Because the rejection and judgment won't kill you, right? And nor will just being this thin layer of charisma constantly, but it will lead to you having very flat, boring relationships that don't lead to the depth and the interest that you want and the connection you desire, right? And you'll just keep going that. And then you'll be in the story that all women are like that. Mistake number 4. So what's this one? Dependency, right? Control. To create business, to create high achievement in life, often we have to go to high levels of control, right? I work with a lot of avoidant men, dismissive avoidant, fearful avoidant sometimes as well, men. And one of the things we do, because I'm avoidant as well, is we want to control things because we want to avoid pain. And this control and also this emotional kind of numbness and not connection can be really great in business, right? It can be really great when it comes to building a career and climbing the greasy ladder, right? Which I also did. But ultimately, the problem is that you don't learn how to surrender, right? And you relate anything like surrender, opening up emotionally, to weakness, to a loss of freedom, right? And the problem is with relationships and with dating, if you try and control things, you basically become like Gollum, right? You might not have 100% Gollum energy, but there's like a 10% Gollum energy in there. And like for some women, that's really unattractive. And if you are at the like 80% Gollum energy, which is like, oh, my precious, I'm going to control everything, right? You're going to find women who either like to be controlled, but also like fight against it, which means you end up these really toxic dynamics of relationships. Or there's just going to be a lot of stress and strife in your relationship, and you're not going to realize it's control because what you're trying to do is stay safe. You're trying to avoid being hurt, and you want to avoid dependency. So if this is a scale of like total freedom over here and dependency over here, because you're so scared of being dependent, right? As soon as you move along this line here, even when you still got like lots of control, you'll feel like you're just next to dependence. So you'll start to freak out and you want to throw yourself back over here. But ultimately, the thing is the control issue is with you, right? You need to learn to surrender. You need to learn to open up. You need to learn to allow someone else actually to fulfill some of your needs, right? And be there for you instead of wanting to do everything yourself and being this kind of lone wolf. Because being in a relationship with a lone wolf is actually really lonely and it avoids connection. And you're actually losing out on some of the beauty that can be in a relationship where you start to allow someone else or you start to follow someone else's lead sometimes and do things in the way they want to, and you can have new, beautiful experiences. Both of those experiences can be very physical experiences. I mean, in the real world, not necessarily sexual, which they also can be, but also you get to have emotional experiences because you allow someone else's natural ability to direct, to come through and actually impact you and kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? It's like to pass through you, to be transmitted to you, right? In a way that you would have never experienced before. Because interdependence is what is needed in any like relationship, in any kind of dating situation. Because ultimately, if you try and control everything, you end up controlling nothing and you become really stressed, right? And you become really lonely and dating becomes really difficult. And there's these tiny ways that we control things. It's like we always hold back emotion. We only say the things about ourselves that we think is going to be acceptable. We respond in very predictable ways. Like I even find myself saying the same sort of things again and again. This is how we control. Mistake number 5. This is one that's really common. Overthinking of like attraction and connection. Right? Overthinking of attraction and connection and underfeeling, right? On the feeling, underfeeling on feeling, right? This is really common again for high achieving men, especially avoidant high achieving men and men in general, because we're not taught to feel. We're taught out of feeling from a very young age. You can check out some of my episodes. I've talked about the man box, for instance, or feelings in general. I think I did an episode a few back about feeling more. We're taught out of feelings as young boys because we're ridiculed about and so forth. It's seen as weakness. The problem is relationships and dating relationships are emotional entities. Dating is an emotional attunement exercise. Really, can I tune to this person? Can I feel a level of like connection and oneness with them? But if we're in our head all the time, we can't. We try to intellectualize chemistry and connection, and it doesn't happen here. It happens here in the body. And I don't just mean the heart, I mean the whole body. That's where feelings occur, not just in the mind and thinking. Because then we end up in this kind of searching of tick boxing, does she do this? Does she do that? Is she these things? And we tick box dating, and we think that we can figure out who's right for us based on the tick box exercise, the spreadsheet we have, the shared background, the lifestyle, the job, the income, the what's the other one I can think of? Degrees and so forth, education, when actually love is felt. Yeah. And once we get past our patterns, our negative patterns that we all have, right, and we can start to feel someone more deeply, right, then we can start to choose based on how we feel instead of what we think we should have or what our parents have told us we should have. Right. So overthinking disconnects us from our feeling. Overthinking really is something we do to avoid feeling because we find feeling uncomfortable. Right. And overthinking just loops constantly. Right. Because you can always create new thinking inside your mind. As long as you're bypassing the feeling, right, the emotion that sits underneath, when you can sit with the emotion and actually process the emotion, you'd be surprised how little overthinking you do. Right. I know this for myself. I know this for my clients. One of the things that comes out of my clients so often is like, man, I don't fucking overthink like I used to. I'm able to like cut the loop and like drop into the feeling and see that there's wisdom there and take the message from that. Right. Because ultimately intimacy requires you to open up, and intimacy also requires, and I should have said this in the bit about control, intimacy requires uncertainty, mystery. Yeah. Closeness, relationships, intimacy, they all thrive on this like freedom and this togetherness, right? And certainty and uncertainty. It's common as like X, Y kind of thing, right? You can think of those little charts you saw at school. We need a mix of all of those things. So if you try and control things all the time, or you try and think things and rationally, decide everything all the time, there's no spark, there's no connection, or it burns out very quickly and disappears, or you're left with very shallow relationships, as we've talked about, right? Or your relationships that are very chaotic, right? You choose your poison, right? Because ultimately compatibility doesn't happen on paper or on phone screen now, right? It happens in the moment, in this attuned moment of two people being together and you being like, oh, is this my person? Not based on because they make me look good to other people or that she's attracted to my money or my success, but like, oh, who is this person at a deeper level below those things? And is there an attunement? Is there a resonance between the two of us? And to do that, one of the things is you need to actually be able to and be willing to open up who you are to someone with confidence, with direction, with resilience as well, right? To accept and maybe rejection and so forth. So, little summary. I'm trying to do this more. Summary. So, mistake number 1, leading with worth, right? That's the big problem. What you should be doing is actually starting to lead with who you are, building up the confidence and self-confidence in the deeper aspects of yourself that often we don't believe in. We have, like I said, there are confidence issues or self-esteem issues. Maybe someone, you had a parent or a friend, or not a friend, an enemy, a bully, or a past person that told us would never amount to nothing. That we're a piece of shit and who we are is nothing, right? Or we got that message in some way that affects our confidence. So it's actually building up that internal confidence, not through making money, not through success, right? Those are the ways that don't actually work. How we build up that confidence is through revealing and opening up to people and seeing ourselves being accepted. Number 2, not bringing this competitive mindset, right? Instead of looking at dating as winning, losing, a battle between men and women, seeing it as this connection exercise, coming together. Yeah, opening up again is the key here. Number 3 mistake, wearing charisma as a mask, right? Did this myself. It's an armor. It creates distance between you and other people. Ultimately, there needs to be a level of openness and trust and a willingness to be vulnerable and reveal the different aspects of yourself instead of just having the superficial mask. That's the key. Mistake number 4, control. Trying to control people and avoiding dependency. And this is when really the antidote to this is allowing things to be a little bit out of control, out of your control, following someone else's lead, right? And seeing what beauty can come of that. But also there's an emotional aspect here of allowing yourself to be emotionally open and to be emotionally out of control to some degree. So you can actually fall and like somebody. Number 5, the last mistake, right, is overthinking, really. Overthinking attraction and underfeeling connection. So this is dropping out of the, what's it called? The tick box exercise, and actually learning to actually feel our body so we can be attuned to the person in front of us, so that it's not all about what we think things should look like and we think things should be. Fantastic, guys. So as I finish up here, one of the things I talked about a little bit was around avoidance and so forth. And as some of you may know, if you've been here for a long time, I've got a program that starts on the 24th of September, right, which is all about avoidance, which is because this is the third time I'm running this, and really helping avoidant men, just like you, high achieving avoidant men, right, out there, avoiding overthinking and so forth, and dropping into feeling. And know if you start feeling, you're not going to be a blubbering mess. There's about creating containment around your feeling so that actually feeling becomes easier and you can deploy it at the right times, and that overthinking doesn't ruin your life in the ways it is, and that you can actually create the intimacy and love you desire instead of running away, breaking down the connections, pulling away when you don't want to, all those things that you keep doing, you keep experiencing, whether that also in cheating throws in there as well, right? So if that sounds like something you need, right, might not be something you want, but it might be something you need. There's a link down below. You can drop me an email. We can have a chat about it. And there's also more details down there about signing up, but you better get in because there's only limited spaces, limited to 20 spaces. So you don't want to miss out, right? Because it may be the last time I run this program as well. So I just finish up by saying, leave a like, a little review, ask me a question, about the topic that we just discussed. And also know that I bring out videos every Sunday. Well, I do in order: Wednesday, Friday, and Sunday. So stay tuned, subscribe. Ciao, ciao.